Later. Later still. More laterer.
Jason's here and he's as cool as you remember. He's got the mask, he's got the machete, he's built like a Ford F-150. Just the way I like him. But how is he really? Let's look at how the PTB has turned out for the old Jasonator and... Man, writing intros is hard, let's get into it. To start with Jason's story, you probably already know it. Bullied at Camp Crystal Lake, drowned because of counselor neglect, mother comes back to... Oh... Wait, that's actually the wrong one. Yes, funnily enough, this is actually more of a Ghostface situation. This Jason has a completely new story, and what does that story consist of? Well, it kinda goes like this. You know, honestly, I have zero problems with this. It's hilarious to imagine and sets up for a really good 2v8 theme. I mean, we already have Greenville in the mode, so might as well add the killers, right? I'm not a huge fan of 2v8 as a whole, but this sets up for one so well that I'm fine with it. I don't have a lot to talk about with Jason's story because I think it's just pretty standard. Like, yeah, that's definitely what Jason does. Does it kind of read like a fanfiction you'd find after hours of scrolling through AO3? Yeah, that's why it's awesome. Now for his design, and... you know, I'm actually okay with it. When the Jason Universe redesign was revealed a year ago, I was not very fond of it. I thought it looked boring and the mask looked really wonky. Jason there just kind of looked like a dude in a hockey mask, and while that doesn't sound too off for Jason's description, there's a lot more that can be done with him than that. His proportions looked a little too normal, and his jacket, shirt, and pants all blended together to form one kinda bland dude. Dead by Daylight has done a lot to make me appreciate the design more. The jacket is a slightly more distinct green, enough to look different amongst the rest of his outfit, and his bulk has certainly come back a bit. It also helps that he has other people around him to show off that muscle. Overall, I think this is probably the best that the Jason Universe design has looked so far. Fortnite and Call of Duty tried, but Dead by Daylight is the one that really succeeded the most. The one fault of licensed killers, generally speaking, is that they don't get too many cosmetics. This has died off a bit in more recent releases, like with Springtrap getting a blighted skin and Xenomorph being the greediest licensed killer ever, but there are still plenty of them who lack diverse skin options. That being said, since Jason is an original take on the character, maybe we'll get some really cool cosmetics. Oh! Yeah, that's pretty good. And wait, what? That was only a rare? And those are his very rares? None of them are linked. Holy shit! They're killing it! I especially like how the very rares feel like they're referencing two of his movie appearances while still being legally distinct enough to pass on their own. I fully expect Jason to be a part of this year's Blighted Skin collection because original content seems to be pretty hugely on the table for him. Going back to the Unknown and Jason connection, a 2v8 based on both of these two being added would be pretty cool, alongside skins where they both try to mimic the other's look. This would be explained by alternate universes where one decisively killed the other, with Unknown assimilating Jason's look and Jason wearing the remains of the Unknown on his body. Maybe they could even do a community contest where everyone gets a variant of one of these skins based on which killer does better in the mode. Basically, they'd both be Thrag with the Battle Beast cape because I find that visual really, really funny. Where Jason's visuals kind of fall apart for me is the animations. They're not horrible by any means, but they're nothing too special. I'm really not sure why they laid off some of the animators who have done great work in the past, because it's showing with Henry and now Jason. Springtrap has some of the best animation work in the whole game, and to go from him to this is just sad. Going into Jason's PTB, I wasn't expecting to be blown away by his gameplay. I even made a short about how I was kind of worried about his inclusion in the game, thinking that just about anything he could do was already done in some way. I was kinda right, but then again, we're 10 years deep into the game now. When's the last time you haven't been able to draw comparisons between a new and pre-existing killer? I mean, maybe Henry, but I'm pretending he doesn't exist since he hurts my argument. To try and be brief on how Jason's power works, he has two main mechanics, Spike Throw and Omnipresent Evil. Spike Throw is the much easier one to explain. He winds up a spike if he has one and throws it straight ahead. This thing is, I believe, the fastest projectile in the whole game, moving ever so slightly faster than a fully charged Huntress Hatchet. When the spike hits a survivor, they're injured and sent flying in the direction that the spike was thrown, almost like a Wesker dash if it was guaranteed to damage the survivor. If the survivor was already injured and hit a wall while being pushed, they get embedded into the wall, where Jason can then grab them while being immune to blinds, I believe. He reloads these by either grabbing them from one of the 10 scrap piles around the map, or by tearing a hook apart, one of the coolest Why am I fucking saying? He reloads these by either grabbing from one of 10 scrap piles around the map, which sometimes can spawn very close to each other, by the way, or by tearing a hook apart, one of the coolest concepts to come from Dead by Daylight in a very long time. Technically, these two types are different, but the only distinction is that hook spikes embed into the survivor and give them the broken effect. Oh yeah, and he can always see the embedded spike's aura if he's close. Instead of being based on a timer, scrap piles replenish whenever Jason activates the other half of his power, Omnipresent Evil. Activating this puts you in a state akin to Spirit's Phase Walk, or more similarly, Dracula's Bat form. While in this form, you can't see the exact location of survivors, but you can sense mist clouds from ones who are stationary or footsteps from ones who are moving. You move at remarkable speeds and can stay in this form for as long as you like, but exiting isn't so simple. While in Omnipresent Evil, you target nearby pallets, windows, and breakable walls. When you want to leave this form, you teleport to one of these props and jump scare any nearby survivors, forcing them to scream if they aren't crouched. Crouching is actually a big counter to this part of Jason's power, as you both don't get revealed by mist clouds or footsteps, and don't scream if Jason jump scares near you. Urban Evasion might be a good pick for when Jason comes out. Just make sure he can't find you if you're gonna hide from him. He has a haste effect for the next 25 seconds after jump scaring, effectively putting him at 4.6 meters per second. Oh yeah, by the way, it's worth noting that his teleport isn't gimped by RNG like Dredge. Any pallets that didn't spawn will spawn in broken when Jason's around, and he can teleport to broken pallets. It's nice of them to think of a solution for his teleport to work even in dead areas. That was a lot to explain, but overall, I really like this power. He has good skill expression with a learning curve that's not too steep to start off with. Some past anniversary killers have struggled to find a good balance of those two things, so I'm glad Behavior has finally hit a stride with these. It's worth noting, however, that Jason's kit does feel painfully similar to Springtrap. Both of them ready a single-shot ranged weapon that can embed itself into a survivor and have access to a teleport mechanic with stealth tying into it. While that is undeniable, Springtrap and Jason still share enough differences that I'm not too upset about it. While both have a similar single-shot ranged attack, Springtrap's uniquely heavy fire axe gives it a lot of niche uses over certain loops that Jason wouldn't be able to play around nearly as well. At the same time, Jason's spike is a very thin projectile, so he gets to shoot through a lot of things that Springtrap can't. So no, these two are not identical, but they do share a lot of similarities in their average chase-by-chase gameplay. If there's anything I can look at that I don't like about Jason, it would be the spawn logic of scrap piles. These things can sometimes sit right next to each other, which both makes reloading way too easy in those areas and way too hard in others. I attributed this to the amount of piles in the trial in the short that I made last Thursday, but I'm not too sure if this was actually the right call, come to think of it. Spawn logic as a whole is really messed up in this game, and if that were fixed, I could totally see him being fine as is. Also, one last little note, make the spike hit sound punchier, please. I'm not good at sound design, I have 76, now 77, videos to prove it, but I do think there could be a bit more of a notable swing for when a survivor collides with a wall. You know, just a tiny extra shoo! What the fuck am I saying? Now this is where things get a little off. I've been mostly positive about the PTB so far, and that's not going to entirely stop here, but I'm more mixed on these perks than the rest of the content. I'll go ahead and start with the Survivor perks? Yes, that's right, there are actually Survivor perks in the PTB that will be given to an original character alongside Jason's release. Most people are speculating that this will be Julian, who's currently in the tomes and is tied to Greenville along with Jason, Michaela, Sable, etc., but whoever it is, they'll have a pretty amazing set of perks. Of the 3 Survivor perks here, I think the least interesting one is Lend a Hand. Cleansing or blessing a totem activates the perk, and then you can use it on a teammate while healing them. Activating this perk will permanently decrease the amount of healing required on that survivor by 4 charges. Note that this perk can only be used once per trial on the PTB, but it's already getting buffed to be up to 3 uses for the live release, since you can only grant this buff to each teammate once. Lend a Hand might sound a bit odd, but when the description says permanent, it means permanent. It will apply to any healing that a teammate receives after Lend a Hand is used on them. The base charge requirement for a heal is 16 charges. Cutting off 4 means you're reducing their required heal charges by 25%. A 12-second long heal has a huge impact compared to a 16-second long heal, and this perk also acts as a soft counter to anything that slows down healing speeds, while also benefiting anything that speeds them up. In a metagame with so many good healing options already, and not a lot of anti-heal options, Lend a Hand becomes kind of absurd. However, it's also kind of hard to counterbalance without making it awful. I could see a reduction to 2 charges being kind of reasonable, but I think I'd rather see the user take some kind of downside for it. Maybe the user could take in an equal increase to their required healing charges. This wouldn't make the perk completely worthless, since it would be helpful for teammates who are being prioritized by the killer to need less to get healed. To compensate, the user needs to spend more time if they want to heal themselves, or spend a perk slot on inner strength to circumvent it. Next up is cross-examination, which is super unique. The killer leaves, stick with me here, light marks when you're in their terror radius. These marks last for 10 seconds after being set, and walking within range of them grants you the elusive effect until you stray away from them after a 5-second long linger time. To remind you of what elusive does if you don't remember, I get it, it's a new effect. Here. Yep. Does all of that. This one sounds like a complete gimmick perk at first, and you'd be right to assume that it is a little janky, but then you consider how loops work and it starts getting kind of scary. When you loop, you're often going to spots that the killer once was at, and if you pair this perk with light-footed, which silences your footsteps while running, the killer kind of just has no means to track you. Like, sure, the cooldown on light-footed does give them some means, but who's to say you didn't leave the tile while they were trying to mind game? And with a fog vial, oh god, with a fog vial, you disappear. Genuinely, you just vanish. The only counters to this perk on the killer side are to run a stealth killer, run undetectable perks, or open your 10th eye to detect them some other way, because there's no way that third one will be enough. As for how to balance this one, I really don't know. My only thought is to not let it give permanent elusive when in range of the marks, only periodically. Like, say, 4 seconds of elusive and then 4 seconds of no elusive, maybe. I do really like this one as a concept, and I think it's super unique, but it has a lot of flaws that I could see being exploited. It may just be a lost cause. Here's the last one, Wide Open Throttle. This one instantly resets a pallet when you fast vault it, giving you 15% haste for 3 seconds afterwards. That pallet's blocked for a minute after resetting it, but still, this perk is really powerful. I've always had an issue with the other pallet reset perk, Any Means Necessary, because it just felt antithetical to its purpose. You can't reset good pallets when they're immediately broken. Wide Open Throttle at least has a solid chance of fulfilling this goal, and even using it to reset a weaker pallet is mostly fine when you have the haste to get to the new tile. Personally, I think the cooldown and pallet blocking time needs to be increased, maybe to 90 seconds. Alternatively to lengthening the cooldown, I think giving the perk 40-second exhaustion instead of a cooldown would be fair. Pairing this with Lithe, Sprint Burst, or Dead Hard is just a little too much power to give to a survivor in Chase. So, considering survivors got 3 bombshells for their perk options, what does Jason get that might be on a similar level of game changing? Well, it's certainly not Hex Scared to Death. After getting 3 hooks, a totem is cursed. Basic breaking a pallet while this hex is active forces survivors to scream, and they get 13% hindered if they're within 13 meters of the pallet for 3 seconds. New hex perks will continue to baffle me, because they really just can't figure out how to do a good risk-reward perk anymore. Hive Mind was alright, but didn't really feel like a risk since a lot of survivors won't go out of their way to try cleansing it. Overture of Doom is a contender for the worst hex in the game, both because it does nothing and makes its location super obvious. I guess Nothing But Misery had potential, but needing 8 basic attacks really hinders the amount of synergy it can have. Scared to Death falls into a similar trap to Nothing But Misery, but this time the issue comes down to the numbers being too small. Not the hinder itself, mind you, but the duration of it doesn't enable it to make plays enough. The only killers who might like this one are Kaneki and Blight, because those two really needed more options. Yup, I'm not being sarcastic at all. Silent Shadow almost has enough to make it work. You start the trial with a 13-second long undetectable, which also activates whenever you get a hook. That on its own would be pretty bad, but the main draw of this perk is the permanent undetectable during endgame. This gives it a really solid use in endgame builds. Usually a survivor would expect the killer to stick near the hook at endgame, but Silent Shadow gives you the capability to camp just about anywhere. It also helps in scenarios with one survivor left, since they'll struggle a lot more to hide while you patrol the gates. I don't know what I'd change about Silent Shadow. I would like the start of trial effect to last longer, maybe 25 seconds. I know they're going for the 13 theming, but I think having it on the on-hook effect is fine enough. It's hard to have undetectable matter if it lasts for 13 seconds at the very start of the trial, unless your name is Blight or Kaneki, because of course they need more I saved Rampage for last because this one makes me the most upset. You build tokens by basic breaking pallets or walls, and for each token you have being stunned or blinded, pallet stunned or blinded gives you 1% haste for 13 seconds. The most haste you can get from this perk is 13%, which is nothing to scoff at, but it's just not worth it. I don't think I need to explain why this perk sucks, but I'll do it anyways. Being pallet stunned already puts you in an animation which stops you from using the haste for about 3 seconds, so the duration is already misleading. Good blinds usually only come from flashlight saves, where you're stunned for 5 seconds, so that's also really bad. Having to basic break pallets to build the perk kills its combo potential on any killer with a special break, who would probably be the ones who would appreciate haste after a pallet stun the most. And let's be honest, all that work for 13% haste? That's not worthwhile, especially considering this perk can hurt other haste perks now because of diminishing returns, which I am quickly starting to turn on. If we really want to try fixing this perk, I'd start by having the haste apply after you recover from the stun or blind, so that the duration is entirely useful instead of getting a good chunk cut out of it just to activate it. I'd also decrease the maximum token count, but increase the value of each token to 1.3% haste, meaning you only need 10 tokens for the full effect instead of 13. Also, just let it build with special breaks, please. This distinction of basic and special breaks just serves to reduce perk synergy even more, and I really don't think it's gonna be a problem if Leatherface gets a decent perk to run, right? In the end, the perks are what disappoint me the most about this chapter. After Henry had 3 pretty great options, I was expecting a lot better from Jason, especially considering what survivors are getting in the same release. Why did survivors get some really unique stuff that's seen very rarely in other perks, while Jason got a bad hex perk, enduring combo perk of the year, and an only half-decent stealth perk? There's got to be something new that they could do for killers, and there is definitely a way to design killer perks that aren't only usable on Kaneki and Blood. Okay, I'll be honest, my frustration with the perks is a bit overblown, and I still like the chapter overall. I'll at least accept one side getting something interesting over what happened with Sinister Grace, where none of the perks were very good or unique. If it had to be one side, I am glad that it was the survivor side, because the killers already got Jason to play with. Last Anniversary wasn't very fun for me, and that's partially due to the lack of survivor content, which ruined queue times. That and the incredibly anti-fun Twisted Masquerade powers, but that's a topic for another video. If I had to summarize the Jason chapter in a few words, those words would be thematically thrilling and pretty good playing. Like most chapters, I think the game's storytelling and visual design outdo the gameplay, even if Jason is fun to play. Jason's actually one of the worst examples for this, because his visual design and gameplay are kind of neck and neck with each other, but the point still stands. The world of Dead by Daylight should have more mediums to connect to it, because frankly, the asim genre as a whole doesn't have a good reputation. After 10 years of this world existing, DBD should take a plunge with new ways to tell their stories. The casting of Frank Stone, the comics, and even something as dumb as Hooked on You are all important to get more people invested in this world, even if they aren't interested in a genre that is pretty unpopular. Dead by Daylight can stay as the main place for everything, but they need to push more into other territories. People are getting bored, and after Jason, there aren't many big horror icons to draw people back in with namesake alone. Behavior can't rely on licenses forever, or their lightning in a bottle could fizzle out overnight. In a way, I guess you could say that unless Behavior makes some big changes, they could be... Oh, also, the second part to this video is being made still. I just ran into a few complications.